हो जाएंगे. Roll your sleeves. Assalamu alaikum, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, and Ramadan Kareem, dear members and spectators. This is Ashfaq Tola, member of the Council, Institute of Chartered Accountants of Pakistan. And as you all know, that today we will be having a webinar on Pakistan's economy post-COVID. And I'm pleased to tell you that as we announced that the Finance Minister of Pakistan, Dr. Abdul Hafiz Sheikh, will speak on the subject and this will be followed by question and answers. So let me just begin by the recitation from Holy Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد صدق الله العظيم. Before Dr. Sheikh start his presentation, let me just give you a brief background about him. Dr. Sheikh has a very long career in economics and mashallah, a graduate from Pakistan, Karachi University, and then he has done his PhD from Boston University. Thereafter, he has served so many countries and so many institutions, including IMF and World Bank. And he has a distinct career. And he started his political journey in Pakistan in 2000 as finance minister of Sindh, and then he became senator. Thereafter, he was minister for privatization, and then finance minister. And again, at this critical juncture, we have eyes set on him to turn around the economy, and he's doing his utmost efforts to do it. So before giving him the mic or floor, let me just request Khalilullah Sheikh, our President ICAP, to offer welcome address. Mr. Sheikh.
Thank you so much, Ashfaq sir. Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon to all our participants and viewers. I welcome you all to this very useful and timely webinar organized by the Economic Advisory and Government Relationship Committee of ICAP. It's indeed an honor for us that we have today with us Dr. Abdul Hafiz Sheikh, Honorable Advisor on Finance and Revenue Affairs. Dr. Saab, thank you so much for sparing time out of your busy schedule, rather extremely busy schedule, to share with the participants your thoughts on the subject. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all going through a very unprecedented global crisis, at least in our living memory. From health emergency to now a painful economic calamity, COVID has rapidly and enormously impacted humanity on all fronts. In this stressful scenario, while on individual level, we are trying to cope up with the unanticipated twists and turns of this crisis, we can all imagine the difficult choices and the daunting task that the policymakers have. They have to balance the safety of citizens on the one hand and minimize economic pain on the other. When the US government's $2.2 trillion economic package has been blocked by this crisis, we can imagine how difficult and complex the situation would be for a country like ours with limited resources and where millions were already struggling to make both ends meet. But even in this scarcity of resources, we have seen several important and timely interventions by our government on economic front, very positive, from relief package to reduction in interest rates, to salary financing for businesses at discounted rates, and so on. Now, what is more to be done and what is more in the kitty of the government from relief perspective, how the economic future looks like? We have none other than the person who decked the driving seats, navigating us through the crisis, to let us know about his plans. A bit about ICAP. ICAP, as you all know, is one of the most prestigious institutes of the country, which is known for the quality of the chartered accountants that we produce, with our alumni proving its mettle in all global capitals, in all capitals of the world. ICAP has also been playing a very important role of a trusted advisor for governments, and will continue to do so by offering various proposals at the times of budgets, important proposals, and other economic measures on how best to support various segments of society to remove hardships and to enable growth. In the end, before I hand it over to our able moderator, Ashfaq Sir, let me pray to Almighty that we sail through this storm smoothly and come out of this crisis stronger than before. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheikh Saab, for a wonderful welcome address, a brief and concise. And now it's over to our Honorable Finance Minister, Dr. Abdul Hafiz Sheikh, to enlighten us and give us insight on the subject, that what is going to be the scenario, what likely scenario in the post-COVID era on Pakistan's economy. Sheikh Saab, over to you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ashfaq Sahab, Khalilullah Sheikh Sahab, distinguished members of ICAP, Assalamu alaikum. Let me start by saying that ICAP is a very important institution. They have always tried to set a high standard of professionalism, and their contributions to our economy need to be clearly recognized. And I think they always put together a very impressive event, and I really feel thankful to Ashfaq Sahab for giving me this privilege and this honor to talk to you. So thank you very much. I would try to keep my remarks brief so we can have more time for interaction and Q&A. लेकिन जब ये government आई तो the country was facing a severe economic crisis, and it was very important to try and get the economy out of that and on a path of recovery and stabilization. And this is where we were. We thought that some of the tough decisions this government had taken were beginning to put our economy on the path of recovery and to start generating a level of growth which our people expect. So what were some of the big decisions that were taken? First, the current account deficit was about $20 billion. That was brought down to $3 billion. Exports, which had stagnated for the last 5 years due to incentives and making it easier to do business, they were beginning to recover. The rupee that had been artificially kept at the low point was allowed to find its correct level determined by market forces, and it had become stable. Confidence was restored in the global community by having a very good program with the IMF, as well as excellent relationship with the मेरे ख्याल में आवाज बेहतर नहीं आ रही थी, तो आई एम गोइंग टू स्पीक अ बिट लाउडर. आप चेक कर लेना कि आ रही है या नहीं आ रही. बेटर है या सही है? ठीक. ओके, मैं ये कह रहा था कि जब ये हुकूमत आई तो the country was in an economic crisis, and because of many decisions the government had to take to try and get it on a path of recovery. जो current account deficit को हमने कम किया from 20 billion to 3 billion US. Exports which were stagnating were beginning to start doing better, and there was positive growth. Similarly, the rupee, which was artificially overvalued, was allowed to find its true value based on market forces, and it had become stable. The global players and financial institutions were showing confidence in Pakistan. और IMF के साथ हमने बहुत अच्छा एक program किया, which had a $6 billion component, and Asian Development Bank and World Bank were also backing us. The private financial markets were also coming, and foreign direct investment increased by over 100%. Similarly, we were able to mobilize the taxes, or वो 16 से 17% growth we were getting in its progress. Non-tax revenue, the target for which was about 1.1 trillion, we actually will end the year with 1.4 trillion, so it will be surpassed. And we were able to do things for our citizens, especially the most vulnerable groups, जिनके लिए जो budget है, that was almost doubled from 100 to 192 billion, and about 40 plus million citizens of Pakistan were getting, many of them women, were getting a monthly stipends. So this was the state of affairs. We thought we will approach a 3% GDP growth rate, and with the tax revenues going up by 16%, we would get further acceleration in the last 3 months and reach a very good level of about 4.7 or 4.8 trillion rupees. Now, all that has been affected. As you know, this is unique, and it's affecting many countries in the world, or almost all, or most of the countries in the world. And the IMF is estimating that because of that, the global GDP will contract by about 3%. So what does it mean for us? First, if the global GDP contracts, that means there's less demand for our exports. And we are already seeing that, because in April our exports reduced by about 40% compared to the April of last year. Similarly, remittances are going to be affected because the Gulf countries are hurting, as well as US and UK, where many of our residents of Pakistan are working. At the same time, we have a problem with unemployment going up because of the lockdowns and the reduction of economic activity. And the tax revenue, which we thought would be about 4.7, 4.8 trillion, we think that that will be, if we are really lucky, that will be about 3.9 or so. So there is about a 0.8 trillion hit on the revenue side. Our expenditures are going to be affected because we have to offer support to our citizens and our businesses during this time. So this is where we are. In terms of specific numbers, it's hard to figure out because A, we don't know the severity of this problem, and B, we don't know the duration of this problem. We think that right now, where we are is likely to worsen, and in the next 3 to 4 weeks, we could be hitting a peak, and only then perhaps we'll be able to articulate with more certainty what the numbers would look like. At the moment, the estimates we have is that the GDP growth, which was expected to be pre-COVID about 3%, could end up being -1 to -1.5%. So that means that we have a pretty bad last quarter of this fiscal year, and of course the first quarter of the next fiscal year, the reverberations will still be felt. At the same time now, what are we doing about it? As you know, there are 2 or 3 important areas we have to focus. The first is to get relief into the hands of our people and our companies, for which we have overall given a 1.2 trillion economic stimulus package. And some of the main components of that package are, first, to try and get about 144 billion in the hands of 12 million families, which that process is going on. And the whole world is seeing that it's being done in a transparent and correct way. The second is to try and get 40 million recently unemployed, post-COVID affected workers some cash transfers. And that scheme has been passed, and in the next few days you will see that money getting distributed. The second part of this stimulus package is to try and help the companies. So what are some of those measures? The first is that we are giving payroll expense loans at subsidized rates of 4% to help companies keep their employees on their payroll. The second is that we accelerated the payments of sales taxes, refunds by 100 billion, and we are planning to do the same for income tax refunds. The sales tax refunds have already been done to a large extent, and the income tax refunds are in the process of being done. Then we sat together and decided to give free electricity for 3 months to all commercial enterprises. That could run all small commercial enterprises. तो जिनके भी इलेक्ट्रिसिटी के जो यूनिट हैं, जिनकी जो कमर्शियली सबसे छोटे हैं, whether it's a barber shop, it's a small general store or whatever, इनकी जितनी भी expenditure हुई है इलेक्ट्रिसिटी के ऊपर in the last 3 months, they will be able to use that amount of electricity free in the future. And then we are also passing on the benefits of the low oil price that we are currently experiencing in the global markets. और ये तकरीबन 30 से 40% जो है तक reduction की गई है in the prices of some of the energy products. At the same time, we are giving electricity units to about 70 to 80%. Electricity and gas, we are allowing the domestic consumers to defer payment for 3 months of their utility bills. Also, we are in consultation with the businesses to try and give them loans, especially to micro enterprises, very small enterprises that don't get money from banking sector in general, ताकि उनको 1%, 2% और 3% के ऊपर loans दिए जाएं, and the government should guarantee those loans also. Then we have a window called Kamyab Jawan Pakistan program, where the limit was about 10 million, and now we have increased that to 25 million. Similarly, in the banking sector, if the businesses have to pay their principal amounts, that is being deferred for a year to give them the breathing space that they are not pinned to the wall for paying this amount right away. So these are some of the areas. Then a major challenge for us is to try and get money into the hands of people in the agriculture sector. So the government has decided to spend about 280 billion rupees to procure wheat, and that is being done by the center as well as the provincial governments. And the idea is to build a food security stock, but also to get this 280 billion into the hands of the agriculture sector so they can in turn generate demand in the economy. Or uski bunyadi wajah se the retail sector, the edible items sector, as well as maybe motorcycles and tractors and other items, their demand can be generated, so the economy doesn't really contract. And the final point is on this is that we are trying to strike a balance between protecting our citizens, but also being mindful that we don't allow our companies, the business sector, to really go under. So we have tried to strike a good balance, and some of the industry which is in the nature of essential products, like transportation of goods or fulfillment of export contracts, construction sector, and selected retail outlets and so on, ताकि उनको भी खोला जाए बतदरीज in steps with standard and strict SOPs. So these are some of the measures we have taken, on the relief side, some on the business revival side or business, and reducing the negative impacts on the business side. Obviously, it's a big challenge, and everyone has to pitch in, including the government in Islamabad, the provincial governments, the private sector businesses, philanthropists, civil society, and all that. It's a time for us all to work together as a team. I'm going to stop now and invite any questions or comments or reactions from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheikh Saab, for such a nice and very crisp presentation on the existing situation and what initiatives government has taken to boost up the economy. The first question, which as a moderator I'm asking you, is that what is likely to be the future scenario of Pakistan economy 1 year down the road, knowing the fact that we don't know the duration of this pandemic? However, we would like to have your insight on that, being the frontline manager and the effect manager of the economy, that what is going to be the likely scenario and when we will be ending up next financial or fiscal year, what is going to be the financial translation of it?
Yeah. As I said, it's too early to actually be very confident in saying what the scenario will be 1 year from now. In a general sense, obviously, it will be worse than where we were. Some of the areas that will be impacted are the ones I listed before. The agriculture sector we have a threat from the locust, but by and large, I think if we insulate ourselves from that, then the agriculture sector is likely to be least affected. If the overall global economy improves, then I think on the export side, perhaps the hit can be minimized. Otherwise, we think that there will be a reduction in exports. I can't say how much that will be. The import side is going to depend on the nature of the recovery and which sectors are going to be leading the charge on the recovery side. I think that the real worry is how to increase the size of the economy when there will be so many tendencies towards contraction. And that's why the government has to adopt a fiscal and a monetary policy where the cost of doing business is less, where the taxes are not so oppressive and contractionary, where government expenditure policies are we still have to follow a policy of smart expenditure management, but we have to ensure also that the fiscal policy is geared towards generating multiplier effects in the economy. And the monetary policy, as you've seen already, the policy rate has been brought down by 4.25%. And, depending on what happens to inflation, we can probably see further moves by the central bank. So the challenge for us is to try and ensure that lockdown keeps taking place only to the point that it's necessary, and that we have a gradual opening up of the economy in a calculated and a responsible way, so that the situation we see today is improved. In terms of the GDP growth rate, we are hoping that next year we will aim for a 2% growth rate. Similarly, I think some of the numbers on fiscal deficit, which we think would be about 9% this year compared to our target of 7% plus, we would like to bring it down next year. On the debt side, that has always been a challenge. We were hoping that as we grow the economy faster, the debt to GDP ratio would come down. So we still have to be mindful. And the positive, news, if you want to think about that, is that with interest rate coming down, some of the costs of debt would also decline. And we will be very careful in trying to borrow at rates that are concessionary and not rush towards high cost borrowing.
So the budget is around the corner, and considering the low of the business, do we feel that this is going to be a friendly budget, consummating all the aspects of the business and the concession which we require in the budget? Because on the other side of the story, we have got a mammoth target of 5.1 trillion, as suggested by the multilateral donors. And in that, we have got 800 billion worth of new taxes to be generated. So do you think we will strike a balance between what, as far as the government is concerned and as far as we're dealing with IMF is concerned?
Yeah. So I should say that, the discussions with the IMF are an ongoing one. And they have been very supportive of the government's stimulus package. They have been very supportive of government's moves to deal with contraction in the economy. And I want to especially share with you the government's extraordinary, I think, package that has been given to the construction industry. As all of you know, construction industry generates jobs. It is also a kind of sector which generates economic activity in many related industries. So that has great multiplier effects in generating prosperity. So some of the things we have done in the construction industry is first to give them a fixed tax regime. So they are not harassed by FBR, and it's very straightforward and transparent. Secondly, there is no withholding tax on builders and developers except for steel and cement purchases. Thirdly, the source of income is not being asked for a variety of construction activity. Then capital gains tax has been eliminated on one house, and 90% of this lower tax is waived on the PM's Naya Pakistan project. And there are new subsidies being given to generate the demand for affordable housing and to get the less privileged people to own their own houses. And 30 billion rupees have been set for that also in the budget. So all these things, the point I'm making is that the budget will try to identify more and more sectors where incentives can be offered. The philosophy will be first to try and reduce the cost of doing business, to try and reduce a lot of raw material, imported raw materials tariffs, to make it, again, less costly on the input side. And as I said, of course, we have to collect taxes. But as I said at the outset, the drive will have to be done in a cautious and correct way, so that we don't suppress economic activity or to make it counter some of the other expansionary moves that one has. But otherwise, tax revenues are very important. And I think they are the source of generating infrastructure in the country and giving the basic requirements of our people in terms of education and health and police and municipal and services and drinking water and so on. So we have to do it, but also collect it in an efficient way.
So the next question is actually, this is being viewed globally now.
Yes.
And mashallah, you have got viewers from Middle East and rest of the world as well. So they have got their own questions as well. And I'll ask them
Yes.
time and again. Actually, the issue is that you have given a very good package to construction sector.
Yes.
And obviously it will generate their activity. And I am quite positive about it that this will give a good boost to the economy. So do you think, such concession is also required by the other industrial sectors like large-scale industry, small-scale industries or SMEs? Because they also need same treatment in order to jack up the economy. So can you please elaborate on that, can we introduce some taxation measures to give them a boost as well?
Well, in the run-up to the budget, we are in consultations with the relevant business representatives. We have already talked to the Federation of Chambers. We're talking to the Karachi Chamber, the Lahore Chamber, the Pakistan Business Council, the Overseas Investors Group, and industry-specific like the dairy industry, the beverage industry, the steel industry, textile industry, cement, sugar, so that is the normal process. And yes, we want to give incentives across a wide range of industries. And many of them are already there. Pakistan has a very liberal uh, investment regime. What has been lacking in the past is the excessive role of the government and its various agencies and the multiplicity of and proliferation of players who make the cost of doing business higher. So we have to reduce the level of excessive regulation. We have to reduce the proliferation of government inspectors and agencies. We have to accelerate the process of approvals and registrations, and we have to be better in providing utilities at costs that are not excessive. And once again, one of the good things is that the prices of utilities have come down, and they're likely to stay that way in the foreseeable future. And we're also trying to identify instruments for benefiting from this low set of prices by hedging and guarding ourselves in terms of future price rises. So these are a combination of things we are taking. And through these conversations, we would like to get ideas on how to replicate or duplicate the kind of incentives we have given in the construction sector in other sectors. Today in the ECC, we passed a special package of support for the agriculture sector to deal with coronavirus. We give them subsidies on tube wells, and today we made the decision to give them subsidies on fertilizer and on seeds, and to give them subsidized loans. So the overall effort is to find the areas during this period to take decisions which have otherwise not been forthcoming. And clearly some of those sectors, like I said, one is agriculture, the other is IT, where the potential has really not been fulfilled. Similarly, tourism, which Pakistan was really getting discovered, and the north in particular was getting swamped by tourists. So these are areas we need to build upon. I think there's a lot of scope there.
Thank you, sir, for a good answer. And I think next question is that, as you mentioned, that you are considering the hedging of oil, considering the low price and taking advantage of that. You've got a huge facility from Saudi Arabia, and I think the outstanding balance is $2.6 billion with us available. So can't we replace that hedging model with by utilizing this subsidy or this deferred oil payment with the Saudi Arabia, because this is much easier and cheaper way to do it?
Well, the requirements of Pakistan in terms of oil imports, LNG imports, and so on are huge. And the Saudi oil facility is, covering a small portion of it. Now, when we think in terms of hedging, again, we do not have the resources to take what's like an insurance on the entire energy import bill. So what we would be doing is to say, look, if we want to hedge, if we want to ensure that the prices do not rise beyond a point, and if they do, we don't have to pay for it, then it will be for a portion of the energy. So this option would be exercised. For example, if you take petrol and you say, all right, if the price is 30 now, but we want to ensure that in the first year it does not go beyond 40. And if it goes beyond 40, we still get to pay 40. and then the bank with which we get this option gives us the money back. So that will cost us some amount. And we think that we can start with maybe getting a hedge for about 15% of our import. Because you have to also think that for the others, if the prices are going to be down anyway, you want to allow that option to be there as well. And like I said, in the end, every extra barrel that you hedge, you need to pay for it. So there is an optimum balance in terms of the certainty of assured supply at a maximum price, and then also the outlay that you have to dish out.
Tax reforms are pending since long. And we've seen so many reports under you we work,
Yes.
the previous regime we worked, that implementation committee is there.
Yes.
I think they are moving at a crocodile pace. And do you think that is the key to the future growth of the country, especially from the revenue perspective? What is your take on that?
Well, a lot of things have to be done before the tax to GDP ratio can be improved. We were beginning to take those measures. As I said, in the first 9 months of this fiscal year that's coming to an end, the growth rate in revenues, tax revenues, were 16 to 17%, which is, which is a kind of growth rate that is not always achieved. So the second point is that we took many measures for documentation, and we sat together with the trader community, small trader community, and tried to strike a deal with them. Our philosophy was not that we should impose high rates of taxes on them. We were able to give them lower rates of taxes, and we were able to increase the number of registered taxpayers by about 0.7 million, from about 1.8 million to about 2.5 million. Now, those things were in place, and I think we were poised to continue on that path. And now, of course, with the coronavirus, that is going to mean a longer path. But our goal is to stay the course, because this is a historic failure of Pakistan that needs to be corrected. And I think we want to continue with documentation. We want to continue with registration of more people into the economy. But we want to incentivize them. We don't want to be heavy-handed. We don't want, at this moment, when the whole country and its economy is suffering, to be overly aggressive on tax collection. But our philosophy has to stay the same. And we have to try and find, smart ways, less costly ways in terms of contracting economic activity. And as far as, the group that is there, that they should meet. And I think you are in that group also. So that group should meet, and in the run up to the budget, they should give us all the ideas, and you will find that there is a receptivity to good ideas. And we like to involve experts from outside the government, people like yourself, people like Shabarzeti, and other people who know much more about how the tax system can be made better. And we're also consulting with international experts. So together, this momentum has to persist, and we have to keep trying to do better, while recognizing that this moment, the primary goal is to get relief into the hands of our public, the hands of our businesses, and try and avoid a recession, to try and cope with this situation of giving hope, of giving cash, of giving incentives, and helping the economy to withstand the blows of this virus, this lockdown, and so on.
So we have a question from our UAE chapter.
Yes.
There are two contrasting questions, and I'll just ask them one by one. The first one is that most of the good professionals will come back to Pakistan, and they would like to have some startups here. They would like to be incentivized from taxation perspective. Although we have got certain measures in our taxation system to cope up with them, nonetheless they want some candid incentive. Furthermore, they are saying that they want to add some value to economy. So how would we incentivize them, and how we can capture their idea?
Well, I think as the Prime Minister has always said, the non-resident Pakistanis are a major asset of Pakistan. And they've also been supporters of the Prime Minister and his government. And we all recognize that if Pakistan is to really go forward, then the talent, the resources, the ideas, the patriotism of these Pakistanis who are acquiring such great experience need to be harnessed. And that's why we have tried to give more incentives for remittances. And we are continuing to do that because that's an ongoing process to make it easier, make it less costly for people to remit funds. And we are about to launch another scheme in which monies can be spent in foreign exchange and get a good return over here in rupees, but then they can be reconverted into dollars to be sent back if they wish to. Similarly, there is a project that's being planned to offer plots of land as part of real estate initiatives to expat Pakistanis. Variants of it have been tried in the past, but this will be on a much larger and I'm sure very transparent basis. Similarly, the Prime Minister has, recruited a lot of people with international experience who all were non-resident Pakistanis. And I think as far as giving incentives for startups and so on, those already exist. But if more incentives have to be given, then again, I think through your ICAP or through other friends or representatives of business community, specific ideas can be given. Because at a general level, we can all agree that yes, there is a need, and we can also agree that we are interested in doing that. But in reality, government decision making is based on specific proposals, and if there are any specific proposals, I welcome those.
The connecting question is that hopefully very soon we will end up with the pandemic, and obviously there will be a job creation and job generation abroad. So those who are returning now, they have to go back and they take their positions. So are we proactive on this front as well with the foreign governments that, okay, they are sending the professionals back or maybe the workers back. So in the case of, or in the event of things went okay, they'd accept them back. Is there any policy of the government?
Right. So the government has been in dialogue with those countries that host Pakistani workers. And this whole process is being navigated and orchestrated with the Ministry of Overseas Pakistanis. And right now, when many Pakistanis who are working abroad, and the number is a little over 100,000 who want to come back, they are being facilitated to come back. Many of them are in private sector jobs and will go back in a routine sort of way. If some lose their jobs permanently, obviously they will need to find jobs either here or in the countries from where they came or wherever. And the government has negotiated with several countries the recruitment of larger Pakistani employees. And that process is continuing. And I think should be even more energized post Corona, because that's just part of promotion of our exports and earning of foreign exchange.
The smart lockdown or complete lockdown.
Yes.
They are two different perspectives. And I think there is a cost attached to it.
Right.
As far as we are concerned, we are just looking at that people who are not winning their bread. They are in a crisis, so we have opened up quite a few sectors, and that is creating itself a crisis again. So do you think, are you a proponent of full lockdown or partial lockdown? Because obviously, full lockdown means a lot of burden on the economy. What is your take?
Right. So, I think it's a kind of a manufactured debate about full lockdown versus partial. There is no such thing as a full lockdown, because in any kind of a lockdown arrangement, there are certain activities that are permitted, whether they are hospitals or whether they are in the nature of public safety projects or essential goods like the movement of food items and medicines and so on. What's important is to realize that what exactly does lockdown consist of? And if you want to not have a situation where the majority of the people, especially in a country like Pakistan, who are poor, who earn their daily wages from day to day, and who cannot economically afford to be quote locked down or socially distanced for many weeks at a time. So the Prime Minister has been arguing for using wisdom and using information, and I think a realization that we cannot simply pretend to have our people in a lockdown when in fact in the rural areas, in the poorer areas of urban spaces, there is no such thing as social distancing as it is defined and understood by medical experts. So we have to recognize that. So clearly what one doesn't want is to encourage congregations, encourage gatherings, encourage get-togethers, or encourage the accumulation of more people in single spaces. Having said that, from the outset, we have had a policy of movement of goods, because that's very important. You don't want food shortages to emerge. You don't want edible stuff to not get from one place to the other. Second, if there are any export orders and they are in the process of being, taken to the port and so on, you don't want to do that. Stop them. Construction activity in open areas with proper safeguards. You don't want that to be brought to a complete halt. You do want to allow certain types of industries, which you can call essential goods. And what we have done in Pakistan is that we have worked with all 4 provinces. And I think this process has, contrary to some of the noise in the public space, has gone fairly well. And I think in consultation with the 4 provinces, some set of guidelines have been developed. Some industries have been allowed to open, either partially or fully. And that is understanding both the dire economic necessity as well as a desire to not completely devastate the economy and make any recovery a traumatic one. At the same time, it's tough, and one has to be very careful, very reasoned, and take decisions while weighing all the pros and cons and striking a balance between the safety of our citizens as well as the survival of our economy.
There's a question from textile sector. They all are the viewers, and they
I
are
was
saying,
told there are 4 questions now. You are on the 20th question already.
"Sir, I have taken an advantage of your short presentation, so now I have got 50. And I know you'll answer all of them. Very smart. So there's a question from textile sector that this pandemic of SRO 1125, when it will be over?
Well, the textile sector is one of the most important sectors in Pakistan economy, particularly since the orientation of this government is to try and promote exports. Why Pakistan has not succeeded in fulfilling its potential is because we have failed to export. And no country can really develop and bring prosperity to its people if you don't have the dollars. So, as this government came in the last budget also, our main focus was on how to help the exporters. And so what did we do? We said, okay, electricity, we will give you subsidy on that. Gas, we will give you subsidy on that. Loans, we will give you subsidy on that. And we came up with a tax refund program for sales tax, which is automated, so they don't get asked for bribes and so on. These things were done for the export sector. Similarly, we went and had a revised FTA with China to open the Chinese markets to our exporters. We have GSP Plus with the European markets to open up their European markets for exporters. When we have met President Trump a few times, that's the one demand we have made, to open the markets for our exporters. And we have also tried to facilitate exports in whichever way that we have had the consultations with the textile sector. So the only area where we have tried to be, I think, if you want to use the term tougher than before, is that we have said that they must, if they are producing textiles for the domestic sector, they must continue to pay the taxes that other domestic sectors do. So there is zero tax rate on all exports of textile. So, one can always have demands, and I see the logic and the motivation of those demands. But we feel that we have an excellent working relationship with the textile sector. Our offices and doors are always open for them. We are in continuous dialogue with them. We try to help them out. We try to reduce, whatever costs that they bear in terms of energy inputs or taxes or whatever. So I think we can keep having that discussion, even going up to the budget. And whatever demands they have that make sense, they will be accepted. I can assure you they are an organized group and they are vocal. And I think that's the way it should be in our democratic arrangement.
They're close to your heart.
Everybody who is trying to produce any economic activity is close to my heart. We do not pick and choose. The only thing that matters to us is to facilitate the business sector, because I'm a firm believer that governments cannot transform societies, but the private businesses can. And we have to work together. We have to make it easy for them. We have to facilitate the job for them. We have to make proper rules for them. We have to give the right policies for them. But in the end, if they do not perform, the country cannot fulfill its destiny.
So last 3 questions. The foremost one is that we have discussed the dark side of pandemic. Now, where opportunity exists, and we would like to hear from you. There are certain perceived an opportunity from adversity now.
Yes.
So where are those?
Dekhen, Sahab, I always believe that, and as a student of development, as somebody who had the good fortune to work and advise 21 countries, in many continents, that opportunities always are looking at us. That opportunities are always there, whether in times of adversity or not, whether there is a pandemic or not. The issue remains the same. Are we in a position, are we in a mood, are we in a resolve to fulfill the opportunity? It has been said about Pakistan that it's a country that never misses an opportunity to miss an opportunity. So I think there are areas even now, because one positive development is the decline in the prices of energy. That clearly creates an opportunity in terms of lower cost for a lot of activities. From the government side, in spite of being in the fund program, we have the opportunity to give incentives to our industry, like the construction industry. This is an opportunity for taking aggressive decisions and trying to cut costs in government corporations and badly run enterprises. Similarly, I think this is an opportunity for the private sector to take a look at how they can transform their processes. So it's also an opportunity to see where costs can be cut, where efficiencies can be brought in. But these opportunities have always existed, and they will always exist. Do we have the wherewithal, the institutional arrangements, and the will and the drive? And we should not be looking only to talk about what the government can do in a particular situation. The government is a very small part in many sectors of the economy. They should stick to doing a good job in not robbing the public's exchequer. They should try and give good policies, good institutional arrangements, and a good regulation, good law and order. But the general task of producing goods and services which are of a certain quality, which have an international market, and which can generate a good image for Pakistan and generate foreign exchange and bring prosperity. That's the task of the business sector.
Another question is that the entire world is capturing opportunity of e-commerce, especially cryptocurrency. China is also introduced. So, do we have any plan to do it very soon, or maybe introduce some budgetary incentives for them, so we can begin the new journey now?
This is also to help us accelerate the concept of
Dekinji, like I said, we can go after one sector or the other, and I don't think government ministers or chartered accountants know where the opportunities are or which sectors are more deserving of an opportunity. The private sector capital finds its way in terms of wherever the opportunities are. So we cannot pick and choose. At the same time, like I said, IT or e-commerce, these are areas, because we have not done so well, that we are trying to give additional incentives to. What happens is that the government has a fixed amount of resources in terms of rupees or dollars. And because they have to be allocated, you have to try and decide what makes sense. If you have 500 billion, how best should you utilize it across incentives? So there's an optimal set of incentives that you want to give, right? Whether in terms of reducing tariffs to make the cost of inputs, whether in terms of providing services or inputs at lower prices, subsidies, whether in terms of fixing a price, as in wheat, So you have to make those decisions. But in general, you know, 50, 60 countries tried with bureaucrats in communist countries to try and decide on these things, and that didn't work out. So what we have to do is create a level playing field and then let the private businesses find out where the opportunities are and where they want to invest.
So thank you very much. It was an excellent presentation followed by very insightful question and answer. May I request our convener CPD to just offer a vote of thanks before we conclude. Over to you, Ali. Please be brief and concise.
Sure.
It's our best to attend.
Thank you, Tullah bhai. Dear members, our distinguished Dr. Abdul Hafiz Sheikh Sahab, our President ICAP, and no doubt Tullah Sahab, Assalamu alaikum. And my special salam to one of our esteemed participants, Mr. Abdullah Yusuf Sahab, our Chairman FBR, who was in audience today. We were extremely honored, Abdul Hafiz Sahab, for the discussion that you held, along with because we were flooded with so many questions. That is why we are extremely real courageous for you, and we are extremely happy that you tried to answer most of them. And to tell you the truth, you have made the day for all of us with your comments that anybody who does any economic activity is very close to your heart. This has really enlightened and uplifted us. Thank you for these comments. And rest assured that under the dynamic leadership of Ishfaq Tullah Sahab in our Economic and Research Committee, you would be getting very sound proposals from the Institute of Chartered Accountants. And we are there holding hands with the government in these troubled times. And no doubt, sir, a huge responsibility lies on your shoulder, because we all as finance professionals are expecting that with the deferment of loans, you can literally put Pakistan back on track financially for the next 5 years. This is what we hope. And no doubt in these times of adversity, we are still hopeful, and we believe that we are there with you, even though there is uncertainty with regard to the severity and the duration of this epidemic. But rest assured, Institute of Chartered Accountants, with its presidents on the helm of affairs, would be there to support you all the way. Thank you, sir, for your precious time. Thank you all members.
Thank you, Ji.
Thank you, audience.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sheikh Sahab, and
Thank you,
the entire team. And inshallah, next week we will be interviewing and have a webinar with Dr. Raza Bakir, Governor of State Bank, and I'm grateful to my friend Ali Jamil for doing this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ji.
Thank you, Ji Hafiz Sahab.
Okay.
And rest assured, we would be asking him more questions than you.
You know that I said that the people who are doing economic activity are close to my
Very
heart.
close. Yes,
but
that's-
one other group that's close to my heart are the chartered accountants.